before we get to the review of Night 2 of WrestleMania and everything else we're going to have on this show, breaking right before Night 2 of WrestleMania and all that a lot of people want to talk about, and as we are recording, the deal was announced. Do we say it's finalized? Or at least it's an agreement?
It's what they want to do. And unless something happens, because it's going to be the publicly traded company with Securities and Exchange Commission and all that stuff and everything, it's going to be done. So if they haven't done it already, finally, and for once and for all, it's going to happen.
Well, the word has come out that Endeavor is buying WWE with the intention of merging it with the UFC and spinning that off to be a brand new publicly traded company.
And boy, howdy, there's so many ironies in this. Number one, what was I saying before we even started doing this program? I've been saying it since probably about 2005. The UFC is doing pro wrestling better than pro wrestling has done pro wrestling. For a while there, especially with that really big run when they were on pay-per-view, they were kicking Vince's ass on pay-per-view before the network. Before he diminished his pay-per-view presence. They were hyping fights in the same manner as you would have seen wrestling promotions do it before everything became entertainment. And it was Joe Silva who was the matchmaker under Dana White before they made this big last deal with Endeavor. He was an old-time, from what I understand, Mid-Atlantic and North Carolina wrestling fan. And it was getting people interested in personalities, accentuating their positive or negative attributes, letting the ones that could talk and got it in their heads and got the picture do their thing, and keeping the other ones in check that would have made it a goddamn shit show because they didn't know what they were doing in terms of working, promoting. And it was more wrestling than wrestling was. And now that wrestling is as far away from what wrestling ever was and what the UFC is, they're under the same fucking umbrella. My mind is boggling. We can talk about that, or we can talk about the fact that now in the corporate hierarchy structure, the way they've got it laid out, Dana White's going to be working for Vince McMahon, kind of, sort of. He's not as important, but at the same time, and Brian, since you're the wizard and wolf of Wall Street up there, Jersey branch, you might be able to tell me how they bought, Endeavor bought the UFC for $4 billion a number of years ago. But now they're saying that the WWE price is $9 billion, but now they're saying that the UFC is valued at about $12 billion. So all of this together are they using Donald Trump's accountant? Where are they coming up with all these billions of dollars? I mean, is that now the time where they're finally going to start working the UFC a little bit more so we can get away from the fucking cartoon hoo-ha Bootio's fucking brand of wrestling and watch some good worked mixed martial arts that we can sink our teeth into? What's going to go on here?
Well, I think they're going to have to most certainly keep the UFC completely separate from WWE, especially for the athletic commissions. They're not going to put up with any of that garbage.
Well, the Athletic Commission supervised professional wrestling for fucking almost 100 years. Some still do.
It's a crazy deal. Vince McMahon will be executive chairman. We don't know what exactly that is. We don't know what functioning role that'll have. I remember several times BMG tried to retire Clive Davis, and every time he came back with another position like, chief creative officer, oh, where's his office? It's up there by the Sony Club. No one ever sees him. So you don't know what Vince's real role will be. When asked on CNBC if he'll be getting involved with creative, he said, and I'm paraphrasing here, we could play the audio later in the show, Maybe on the big level, but not nuts and bolts. So he's going to be involved in everything. Because there's no way he signed a new deal, he's coming with them, he's not going to want to be involved in this?
Well, it's obvious now, and we talked about it, kind of sounded like it was too coincidental to be coincidental that he had signed his contract, a few days before they announced this, before WrestleMania weekend. We talked about that on The Experience a day or so ago. But the thing is that now in the hierarchy, the corporate structure that I saw advertised, Ari Emanuel, who is the head of Endeavor, right, will be the head of this new $21 billion organization that heads both the WWE and UFC. And then somebody else and Vince are going to be on kind of like the same level as, what did you say, executive chairman or chairman of the board?
Well, Vince will be executive chairman. No one else will have that title.
Okay, but then Nick Khan is underneath that as the president of the WWE, and Dana White is the president of the UFC. That means to tell me that Dana is not as important now in this overall thing as Vince is.
Dana is equal in the corporate structure, technically, to Nick Khan now.
Yes, but not equal to Vince's is still bigger.
Why would he be?
Structure.
Why would he be? Honestly, why would he be? He had a minority interest in the Fertitta's company. He was, the face of the company, but he wasn't the majority owner. Vince was the majority owner.
I'm just thinking, he's in my goddamn UFC. They sold it. I got a bunch of money out of it, and and all of a sudden, here going Vince. Now Vince is my boss. What the fuck? Anyway, so as far as the thing that I've been worried the most about is the video library. We've talked about that. I don't care who owns this fucking thing. It's all going to be a goddamn amusement park anymore. But the entire collected history of wrestling on video that they have compiled, which is 85-90% of it at this point, that's what we were worried about. If the Saudis decided, well, we don't need that shit. But one would think that UFC, they understand the value of old films, fight films, content, whatever. Do you think we're safe there? They're not going to make any sudden moves with the goddamn Florida library, are they?
I don't think so. And I think, UFC is just another entity in this. And I think they see WWE as being potentially bigger than UFC. So I don't think UFC is going to be having anything to do with any of this stuff.
Well, I'm just saying, they've already bought one company.
Remember, this is
has an extensive library, and that they use that stuff, and nobody's heard that they've
have a streaming
thrown
service.
That out in the dumpster.
Yeah, they may link everything together in a streaming service. Remember, Ari Emanuel is probably the most successful Hollywood agent of all time. He's had different people play him in TV shows, and maybe just TV shows. I was going to say movies, but definitely TV shows. There's been a few Aris.
Major motion pictures and sitcoms, baby.
But he's been the most successful ever, and he's now in charge of Endeavor, and it's not just the UFC. It's much bigger than that. So they're adding WWE under the umbrella. He's still in charge of everything. This is just a division. There's other things he's doing too. I don't think UFC is going to supersede WWE in terms of any production or WWE production. Actually is maybe the one thing they should take advantage of as a company and do more with that team.
Well, there you go. And I think I asked you before we went on the air also in our brief conversation. The UFC looked great when it was on Fox, but they don't have a production division to rival the scope and the extensiveness and the overall macho-ness of the big-ass WWE production team. So will that branch out? Will they add to that and make one production team doing all of the stuff? I wonder. Have you heard about UFC having I know they've got, it's better than like when Sinclair bought Ring of Honor and we were renting fucking camcorders. But they don't have anything like the WWE's studio in terms of television production, do they? And I'm not saying for people to go, oh, it looks great. I'm not saying they don't look great, but the question is, do they own it? Or do they have that level of facility? Or do they contract with the various people that broadcast their programs and have equipment? Blah, blah, blah.
Well, here I have an article from 2020, UFC's for Fight Island. When they did that during the pandemic, UFC creates live production ecosystem from scratch on Fight Island. So they definitely have something going on internally. But WWE, think about that. No booking, no creative, nothing, but WWE production producing a UFC pay-per-view.
Wow. That would be awesome. Because what do we say? Their packages and the way that they make people look like stars and make things that when you saw it happen in real time and completely, it wasn't that particularly exciting. The packages make it look exciting. So imagine what they could do, with a shoot product. And that's the thing. What I'm looking for, here's what I want out of this. I want a goddamn well-worked, believable UFC. Because wrestling's gone so far down the bend that it's gone now. But if we could just get a few people doing some fucking promos and throw a couple of juicy angles in there and then have the fucking fights, I'd love that. That it'd be just like wrestling came back.
Let me ask you this. So Ari Emanuel's an agent. Does Endeavor own William Morris? I believe they do. So they have an in-house agency. Is this going to be good or bad for wrestlers in terms of salaries? For opportunities, it'll be good because you'll have an in-house agency, technically. Again, we're going to have the issues with the likenesses and the rights and everything. But in terms of actual money, actual contracts, you think this will be good or bad?
Well, hold on. If they've got a talent agency in-house, it'd be much easier to get parts in television and other areas of showbiz for the talent, but I wouldn't want them representing me with the company that they are part of to negotiate my deal with that company, right? You see what I'm saying? That's a conflict of interest.
On CNBC this morning, the whole thing was a conflict of interest because they have Scott Wapner interview Ari Emanuel and the dastardly Vince McMahon.
Dick Dastardly, a.k.a. Vincent Kennedy McMahon.
And as soon as it's over and they go back to the exchange, he goes, I just want to say I'm represented by the agency there. So is this guy. So is this. Everyone on the panel was represented by the man they just interviewed. Think about that.
Well, but here's another thing. And this has been brought up numerous times. The UFC is noted for paying much more for their fighters, much more to the talent as a percentage of their overall income than the WWE does. So at some point, are they going to have to reconcile those practices, or are they going to say then in the company, well, we pay these guys a bigger percentage of the gate or the revenue or whatever because it's a shoot and they're really fighting? And then who over here is going to say, well, fucking Finn just got his fucking head caved in and got about 72,000 staples put in it, and he was working, so how is that different from this guy that fucking outpointed the other guy and never had a glove laid on him or hand laid on him in the shoot? That could get sticky. Because and it's not like that in the UFC they pay the fighters up to the level of the NBA or the NFL or whatever, but they do get more in terms of gates or in terms of payoffs and bonuses on the pay-per-views that we've heard about and et cetera on the gate than the wrestling folks do. But now here's the thing. What's the UFC merchandising like? Because in a lot of cases, as we know, the WWE talent makes more money on merchandising sometimes than they do on their wrestling. So have you heard of anybody in the UFC that happening to? So are the UFC people going to go, hey, that company across the fucking hall, this guy just got a fucking $400,000 check for, action figures and a goddamn video game. And you just sold 6 of my autographed 8x10s. What the fuck's going on here? This could get interesting.
What do you think about the idea that Vince McMahon will now no longer be the majority owner of WWE?
Well, we knew that was going to happen because he's been wanting to sell it. What we didn't know was that he was not only going to come back, make his big comeback and stick around, but put himself in a firmer position with a 2-year contract, and he's 70 fucking 8. So we're starting to close in on it. Any contract he signs from this point on might be a lifetime contract. And not only that, but the new operation is welcoming him to stay there and supervise with open arms. So he's having his cake and he's eating it too. He's getting the how many billions of dollars he's going to get for his portion of the stock. He's got an ongoing, highly paid 7-figure fucking job with the company that he started. And now he's directing at the second highest level. And they love having him there and are going to listen to what he says. So
It's Clive Davis. That's what it is.
Where's the downside here for Vince McMahon besides the unfortunate cosmetic choices he's made?
You're going to have to hide women in the office. There's the downside for the company. Don't go near the copier between the hours of 1 and 2. Vince goes to get his turkey sandwich.
No, you know what? What they're going to do is they're going to make, there's a little roof garden up above the 4th floor. And they taped that Raw opening up there one time with all the guys and blah, blah, blah. They're going to make that like Vince's Wild Kingdom. And if you go up there, it's at your own risk because there's no goddamn game wardens and he's on the prowl.
Well, they're not there anymore. That'd be an interesting twist if Vince decides he's not leaving.
Oh, no. They've just started. They're starting the move next month. Oh. They delayed it till after WrestleMania. Maybe they'll just give Vince the old building and say, look, just fucking escape from New York some shit over here.
Well, they own it, right? They're renting the new place, but they own Titan Tower. So
I believe they do, yeah.
Vince could turn it into his Wild Kingdom. Welcome to Vince's retreat. Try the buffet.
But yeah, so in all seriousness, the pro wrestling business as we knew it has changed forever. The question is how much the new parent company is going to change the WWE, its practices, both practices that maybe we don't even see on a day-to-day basis. The average person wouldn't know was there, and or, the on-air product and in the buildings and what it looks like and who's involved and how it's gone about. And we can't really, we joke about, Vince is having his cake and eating it too, but are there going to be some things that they want to do that are going to be different from the way things have always been done? Because you know what Dutch Mantell says, if you always do what you always did, you always get what you always got. And these people now have $20 billion to pay to somebody, right? Somewhere, or however much they're spending on this and how they're breaking this apart. That's above my pay grade. When you get above 2 or 3 billion, I can't do the math.
Well, he's on TV right now. I'm sorry, I'm distracted. I'm looking at that face. Whatever happened.
If he starts singing "It's a Small, Small World," we'll know something's up with the whole Disney tie-in.
Well, there it is. WWE apparently sold to Endeavor to be merged with the UFC. More about this as it continues to develop. They're borrowing this money, right? This is all this fictitious high finance accounting that normal people can't do. Well, yeah, most people don't have billions of dollars in cash on hand.
Yeah, but so by the time, and the Endeavor and Ari there was saying that they were not looking to change their leverage position just about a month or so ago in a public statement. And now they've leveraged the fuck out of themselves with another $9 billion.
Then Nick Khan made a bunch of robust TV appearances, and they said, oh, something going on. We better do this now. They're going to be in L.A. Let's close it at WrestleMania, like the great Brian last said.
But is anybody are they going to take the water coolers out of Titan Tower again and tighten their belts, cut expenses to try to pay back? What would the interest be if you've borrowed that $9 billion?
One other thing I want to say before we get to WrestleMania, this is part of my frustration with what AEW is, just because, especially now with this new structure, or new infrastructure, I should say, for WWE, that's why we needed not just well-funded, they got that, a well-run, well-managed wrestling company with a good infrastructure and a good management structure to be number two, because this was going to, look at what number one is now. Now it's completely unstoppable.
Yeah.
But we need a strong number two and a serious number two. And that's part of my frustration, just because it's I'm not going to say it's a completely missed opportunity, because the opportunity technically is still out there, but it just feels like a lot of...
They've swung at that opportunity and whiffed so many times by now that I think the people are tired of pitching the ball at them.
Yeah. Well, that was... Oh, go ahead.
And here, one more thing is, maybe Tony Khan now, he can call up the Saudis. He can call up old Prince Mohammed bin Solomon, or whoever the fuck he is, and say, hey, you don't want them to get too far ahead of you, do you? Now they're going to charge you double for those big shows. How about I'll send Moxley over? Now I don't know that they'd give him too much of a response now that I've said that.